Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1998 Represent. On this episode, we're taking a look at The Faculty. So this is my first time fully watching this movie. I have seen clips of it and kind of knew the premise, knew a little bit about the cast, but I never had actually watched the full movie. It was on Paramount Plus. I want to say at least up to a couple days ago, or like I watched it on Halloween night, and finished watching the movie, closed Paramount Plus, closed the tab, went back into it to check out like something in the credits or something, and it was just no longer there. So I think I literally got in like under the wire to watch the movie because it's not showing up there anymore on Paramount Plus. So I did watch it on Paramount Plus. Don't know where they maybe moved it to or if it's even streaming anymore. But I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It's not super long. It's like maybe like an hour and like 45 minutes or so. But it was a lot of fun. I have some notes here about it. We're going to go through those notes. Going to just kind of discuss what I thought about the movie. Some things like that. So a little bit of like information about it. So we just pull these up here. So The Faculty, first released December 25th, 1998. I think this is the fourth feature film from Robert Rodriguez, and it's kind of unlike anything he had directed up to that point. I think like his features, I guess you could say the other one that was a little bit different was more of a short film or part of a short film was the chapter he did for Four Rooms. He directed one of those, and those are all, I think there was like four rooms, I think it was four rooms. Each room was a different like director directing a story about something going on in that room. So I think that's considered like a short. But up to that point, he had directed El Mariachi, Desperado, which is a sequel to that. Sorry, excuse me. And then he did From Dusk Till Dawn, and then The Faculty. From El Mariachi and Desperado are like go together. They're part of the same like. I think it's a trilogy now because I think it's El Mariachi, Desperado, and then years later they did Once Upon a Time in Mexico, which I thought was pretty good. It wasn't as good as Desperado, but I thought it was fun. And then like you can definitely see there's kind of like a similar style or like setting to those movies, El Mariachi, Desperado, and From Dusk Till Dawn. This is the first one where it completely goes to like a different setting. Like this is definitely set in like I think it's like Ohio is where it's set, and it's in a high school. So it's definitely a different setting from what he had done up to that point, which I thought was really cool because you definitely see his influence on like the way he does his shots, like the editing, because he directed and edited this movie. A lot of times he will, or he didn't write this, but a lot of times he will write, direct, edit, and score his own films. I remember like Once Upon a Time in Mexico, I think he had done all of those things. In this one, he was just the director and the editor, I think. Like I said, it's distinctly different from much of his other stuff to that point. One thing I thought was interesting was that the film starts out at a football game or football practice. Because I remember years ago, like mid-90s, I don't know who's being interviewed, but somebody was being interviewed about Robert Rodriguez on like a late night shows like Letterman or something like that. And whoever was being interviewed, it may have been Salma Hayek, I don't remember, because it could have been kind of at the time that she was like starting to kind of really come up and kind of explode. But because she had done From Dusk Till Dawn and a bunch of other stuff up to that point. I think Fools Rush In, films like that. So I think she was being interviewed and was saying that Robert Rodriguez was in high school, or one of the schools he was in, was hired to film football games, like just like point the camera at the game, record the game. Robert Rodriguez eventually got fired from doing that because apparently he was like shooting the game more cinematically, like shooting the reactions of like people on the sidelines, getting the reactions of the parents, following the ball, like having the camera follow the ball when it was being thrown. So like directing it like you would basically direct a sports movie or a scene in a movie where sports are happening. So it was just kind of funny that the very first scene in this movie is a football game because he was kind of hired initially in his like schooling to film football games and got fired for filming it too cinematically, which I thought was kind of like an interesting touch because I remember seeing that on like an interview with somebody explaining that. Let me just bring up this quote from Jordana Brewster about kind of the release of the film because I don't think it made a lot of money because it was released in where was it? The box office apparently wasn't too great for it. But Jordana Brewster said about the movie, quote, it was sort of the inverse of Fast and Furious, right? So with the Fast and Furious, I was like, quote, this is a small movie about cars. It's a really fun summer project. With the faculty, it was like, you guys, this is going to be huge. Look at, look at all these successes around us. Like She's All That and Scream, and it turned out it wasn't so huge. We thought it was going to be massive, but it was a cult classic, so that's really cool. So yeah, I don't think it made a ton of money at the box office. Like I said, it was released at Christmas, and Christmas, I don't know, depends. I think now Christmas movies are kind of bigger. Like they've released some Star Wars movies at Christmas time, which have done well. They released one of the more recent Spider-Man films at like the Christmas season that did well. But this was released on Christmas Day, and maybe Christmas Day is like a different like release type. But it's picked up a cult following from what I remember. I think there was, I think they maybe showed this at Tarantino Theater at one point. It wasn't a theater I was showing that I could go to, but I think I remember vaguely, like with like the last like year or two, them showing this at the New Beverly Cinema, which I could be misremembering that, but I remember seeing it on like an upcoming like um, poster there of upcoming films at his theater. This is kind of like a horror movie, but it also kind of goes into classic sci-fi films. So it's horror, it's sci-fi. It definitely has like Invasion of the Body Snatchers feel to it. Even that Invasion of the Body Snatchers is actually even mentioned in the movie. There's a lot of stuff in there that like is a kind of like an homage to the John Carpenter film The Thing, which is an amazing movie. If you haven't seen The Thing, definitely check it out. One of the themes in the movie is kind of teenage alienation and like literally alienation in this movie, but kind of like going outside of like groups because like the main cast or main crew is you have Elijah Wood, who's kind of like the nerd of the group. You have I forget the cast member's name, but you have Josh Hartnett, who's kind of like the like school like drug dealer basically. You have him. You have a jock, even though the jock is trying to get out of being a jock, and then you have kind of like the shy, kind of like introverted character. So like these four like social groups kind of come together to form kind of the team of who is kind of investigating this weird kind of like alien invasion where people are getting kind of like replaced by these weird like I guess they're like these weird they're basically this weird species of aliens, and they kind of take over the school. And I kind of knew that from reading about it or hearing about it initially, but yeah, they kind of group up, and that's kind of the team that you follow throughout most of the movie. It's let me bring up the cast because the cast I would be able to just go off of the cast then. So yeah, we're basically following Jordana Brewster, Clea Duvall, Laura Harris, Josh Harnett, Sean Hatsy, 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 and then you're following also Elijah Wood as well. So those are kind of like the core like students that are kind of driving the plot forward. It's got a really great. The movie's got a really great performance from Robert Patrick, and Robert Patrick, like Terminator 2 is obviously his best film or best role, but his role as a football coach in this movie is also like really kind of terrifying because he's in the movie, he's one of the first people that you see that like he's on the field kind of just chewing out the players during practice, and then you see something approach from behind him. He turns around, and then the next scene you see him in, he's acting kind of like he's drunk, but he's not drunk. He attacks like another like teacher, and then he's kind of very calm the rest of the movie. And like to me, like calm Robert Patrick is more terrifying than Robert Patrick like yelling at you. Because there's a scene where like one of the star quarter like sports players wants to get out of, he wants to focus more on academics and not football, and he's worried about telling this coach, he's like, hey, like I'm quitting the team. He goes to Robert Patrick, who at this point has already been converted into being like an alien, and he's very calm about it. He's like, hey, like who am I to stop you from like following like what you want to do? Like if he wasn't replaced by the alien, he'd be like, what the hell do you mean you're quitting the team? He'd be like yelling at him and what have you. And there's like just very calm Robert Patrick, and like I said, is terrifying, and he's really good at this movie. The soundtrack, let's take a look at the soundtrack, because the soundtrack's got some pretty good songs on it. Has a garbage song, so that's kind of cool too. Let's see here. Let's go to where the music is, or here's the score and the soundtrack. Marco Beltrami did the score. I mostly know him from he did the soundtrack or the score for Terminator 3 when that came out a few years later, or like 5 years later, I guess. We have some pretty good songs on here. We have some covers of Pink Floyd, it looks like. So we have Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, which is by Class of 99. We have The Kids Aren't Alright by The Offspring. We have I'm 18 by Creed. Helpless by Degeneration. School's Out by Soul Asylum. We have Medication from Garbage, and Garbage, as we all know, released version 2.0 earlier this year, and it made its way to this soundtrack. We have Haunting Me, which is Haunting Me by Stabbing Westward. We have Maybe Someday by Flick. Resuscitation? Yeah, Resuscitation by Sheryl Crow. It's Over Now by Nev. We have Changes by Sean Mullins. We have Stay Young by Oasis, and Another Brick in the Wall, Part 1 by Class of 99. So a pretty decent soundtrack, and I was just like, I always love when I just hear randomly in a movie a garbage song. I remember like in the first Captain Marvel movie, came out a few years ago, there's Only Happy When It Rains is in there. I'm just a huge garbage fan, so I just love when that actually pops up. One of my favorite things about this movie is the kind of homage to The Thing. There's like a great scene in The Thing. They did another version of this in a Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode, which was basically their version of The Thing. But in The Thing, there's a scene where we're trying to figure out who is human and who is been taken over by this alien. And they do this blood test where they take samples of blood, put it into like a little like petri dish, and then kind of take a very hot piece of metal and stick it on the blood. And if the blood reacts to it, that person, whoever's blood that was, has been taken over. So they take some blood, they put it in a petri dish. Normal reaction, doesn't do anything. So it just kind of sizzles, doesn't do anything. They do that for a bunch of other characters, and then by the time it actually reacts, you then know that person's blood is the Thing's blood. In Star Trek, they do it with like a hypo spray. In Star Trek Deep Space Nine, they basically inject somebody with something or like take a sample, and if it reacts to the thing, they know they're a shapeshifter or whatever it was in Star Trek. They do a similar thing in this movie where there is this drug that Josh Hartnett's character is kind of peddling, which is basically it looks like it's like these tubes full of like crushed up, I think it's like caffeine powder or something like that, or caffeine pills that have been crushed up into powder. And the things that are in kind of like taking over people do not like, they need water. So like all the people that have been kind of infected by this stuff are drinking a lot of water. So there's a scene where you see Robert Patrick hanging around the water cooler, and he's just like the little paper like cup things, the little triangle cups. He's just pounding water, and it's just like it's very interesting. And then later throughout the movie, you see more and more water being brought into the faculty lounge. You see huge jugs of water, and so they're like just drinking all this water. And Jon Stewart's in this movie too. Jon Stewart actually has like a pretty interesting bit in this movie where he's the one that helps Elijah Wood discover what this thing is, because Elijah Wood finds this parasite thing basically on the football field, and they scan it, and they basically like put it under a microscope and look at it, and then they throw it into a fish tank, and it like multiplies. It bites Jon Stewart's finger. I think Jon Stewart gets infected. I think it's very easy to get infected by this thing in the movie, but Jon Stewart comes in, and he's at this point possessed or taken over by this thing, and he gets injected in the eye with one of these. There's a lot of really interesting foreshadowing in this movie, because at one point, like before he's infected, he's like, "Oh, stab me in the eye with a pen," and that's actually how he gets taken out. He gets stabbed in the eye with one of these. They look like pens, but they're full of like the crushed up caffeine pills, and it kind of bubbles, and since caffeine is a diuretic, it basically it dehydrates them. So it dehydrates him, and they figure out that these things will react to this caffeine powder. So all the kind of main students in the film are in Josh Hartnett's like lab basically, and this is where it kind of mimics the scene from The Thing where they're like, okay, like sniff this stuff. If nothing happens, or not nothing happens, like Elijah Wood, I think is the first one that actually like sniffs it, and he just starts laughing because it's like he's basically like high at this point. But if you do take it and you are infected by this, like it'll be very obvious. So everybody is like snorting this stuff. Nobody's reacting to it, and then like Jordana Brewster's character and bring up the actress's name really quick because don't think I've seen her in a whole lot of stuff. Let me bring up the cast here. Mary Beth, yeah, Laura Harris and Jordana Brewster are like at the same time they're going to snort this stuff to prove that they are not one of these aliens. Um, they both do it. Jordana Brewster's character reacts to it, like her face gets all like weird, and like she kind of runs off. The really great thing about this movie is it completely subverts expectations with this scene because you see Laura Harris do it and nothing happens. So she's like, okay, cool. The one that's infected is Jordana Brewster's character. It's later revealed in the movie that they do a flashback to this scene where it's actually revealed that Laura Harris is actually the alien parasite queen thing. And when she did the test, like I think like it shows her nostrils block off to not actually like inhale it or like snort it. And then you see like she's got like a tentacled hand that kind of unscrews the cap and a bunch of it pours out. So it was a really cool twist because it just kind of subverted expectations because you're like, okay, this character is not a parasite or not an alien because they passed the test. But then it reveals later in the movie that they actually were like they basically cheated the test by basically just like secretly basically like draining the thing and not even taking the test at all. So that was like a really cool way they subverted expectations in that particular scene. We're gonna just cover the plot. I've already covered a lot of the key elements. But beginning of the film shows a football game where Robert Patrick is just chewing people out. And then it cuts to a scene where they're talking about like school funding and like how like the football team's going to get what they need because it's a football town. Robert Patrick shows back up and attacks one of the teachers, and then that teacher gets away from Robert Patrick, and then another teacher attacks that teacher. And so Robert Patrick and this one other teacher at this point are possessed by these parasites. It shows Elijah Wood's character go to school. He is like on the football field, finds one of these things, and they bring it to the science class where Jon Stewart's character is teaching, like he's a science teacher. They look at it and they throw it in a tank, and it kind of splits off, bites, and it bites through a glove that Jon Stewart is wearing. I think at that point infecting him. And then you see one of the students goes to Robert Patrick and says like, "Hey, I don't want to be on the football team anymore." He's like, "Okay, cool. Like you're like focus on your studies." And he's taking a shower. Another teacher comes in there who's like all like decaying and whatnot, and she's also infected by this thing as well. And then Elijah Wood's character and Jordana Brewster's character are trying to find information in the faculty lounge about something. They hide in a closet and they see Salma Hayek's character come in and get attacked by Robert Patrick. And let me bring up the actress's name here again. It was Robert Patrick and I think Piper Laurie, I think, is the actress. Yeah, Piper Laurie and Robert Patrick attack Salma Hayek. They convert her. The police get called because they said, "Hey, we found a dead body in the closet in the faculty lounge," which they did, which was then later removed. But Elijah Wood's parents or character's parents show up. They kind of chew him out for this whole thing. And then he tries to sneak out of his house. He gets grounded for all this stuff. And then that's when the team kind of like brings Josh Hartnett into it. And that's when they go back to his lab and they do all these tests. There's a big football game going on, so they're trying to figure out who the alien or parasite queen is, because if you get rid of the queen, everybody else that's been affected should revert back to being normal. They think it's like, I think Famke Jensen's in this as well, and I think they think it's her at one point, or they think it's like the one lady that got I forget the actor. It's not Famke Jensen. It's bring up the actor's name, Bebe Neuwirth, I think. She plays one of the characters. She's the one that Robert Patrick kind of tries to attack initially, and then eventually later gets attacked by Piper Laurie. But they think it's her. They end up shooting her and then throwing the powder on her. She was infected, but so I think she actually ends up getting killed because like she straight up got shot. But then it's revealed that the actual alien queen is Laura Harris's character, and she kind of is like, she's like, people were suspicious of her at one point because she's like, it's really interesting that you're like the new kid in school and you show up like the day this stuff starts, like stuff starts getting weird the day you showed up. And then she chases like Elijah Wood's character through like the locker room and into like the gymnasium where he retracts the bleachers and eventually then stabs the monster in the eye with the caffeine powder or whatever it was. And so I don't know if that. So I think that character ended up getting killed as well because I think that character was actually already an alien when they showed up, or infected by this stuff. And then all the other characters go back to being themselves. Interesting because in the credits they show Jon Stewart's now got an eye patch and he's got like a weird kitchen mitt on. Because at one point they take I think Josh Hartnett's character breaks off the slicing arm of a paper cutter and like slices his fingers off, and you see these weird tentacles like coming out of it. So he is still alive, but he's missing an eye and missing a bunch of fingers, or the tips of his fingers. It's kind of some of the visual effects and kind of the kills in this movie are really cool. So it's like I said, the movie's a lot of fun. I had heard of it before, but never had actually watched the entire thing. And one of my favorite things about this series is going through the stuff that came out in 1998, even the stuff I haven't seen, and kind of just watching some of it for the first time. Some of the stuff we've talked about I've seen or listened to plenty of times before, but it was just a lot of fun watching this movie. I don't know where it is streaming now because I think I literally got in like under the wire to watch it. I was watching it like Halloween night, and then it's no longer showing up on Paramount Plus at all. If you even type in The Faculty, it doesn't even pop up anymore. So I think it definitely left streaming or went to a different streaming platform. I don't know what platform it's going to be on next, but it was no longer showing up for me on Paramount Plus. So there's that, I guess. But I had a lot of fun in this movie. It definitely felt like an homage to kind of like classic sci-fi. Like I said, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is literally mentioned in the movie. And then The Thing. But it took those kind of classic sci-fi horror elements and kind of, at least for the time, modernized them into your kind of teenage or high school film as well. So it was like a really cool combination of classic sci-fi horror with a high school film or a teenage film as well. So definitely had a lot of fun watching it. I think that's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back in a few days, probably with another video game or computer game of some kind. And again, that's going to do it for this video. So remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.